Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of the San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, and I'm joined by
investigative reporter Brian Chasnoff.
And obviously, there's been a lot of attention in the news about the influx of Central American migrants on our border, and obviously, our system is overloaded right now. And we're, I think, as of last week, there were 5,000 unaccompanied migrant children in Customs and Border Protection facilities. And just this week, Freeman Coliseum has opened here in San Antonio to provide shelter for unaccompanied migrant kids. And we are glad to be joined today by U.S. Representative, District 28 Congressman Henry Cuellar, whose district includes part of San Antonio, but also a major section of the South Texas border region. Congressman Cuellar, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you.
Well, I know that you made a trip down to the Valley yesterday, Tuesday, to take a look at what's going on down there. What did you see, and what did you hear during the briefings you received?
In many ways, it's something that we've seen before. We saw this in 2014 under President Obama. We saw this in 2019 under President Trump. And we're seeing now this under President Biden. What we see in Donna, there's two facilities. The first one is what they call the temporary outside facility, where if Border Patrol apprehends somebody, they bring him into that first step, which is really under the bridge of the Anzaldúa bridge itself. That's in my district, in the southern part of my district. And then we saw people there, the folks that are coming in, families that are there. And then from there, we also saw the Donna facility, which is, again, these are all Border Patrol facilities where they're supposed to keep people there for 72 hours. But right. They're keeping people there longer. In fact, some of the pods, they're supposed to, under COVID-19, they're supposed to have 33 people. And they have, in some pods, 400, some pods, 500, some pods, 600, when they're supposed to be having only 33 individuals. And that's simply because two reasons. One, too many people coming in and not enough people moving out fast to the Health and Human Services. For example, another facility I've been twice, that's Carrizo Springs as an example. Right. And of course, I'll be visiting the San Antonio area to see the facilities there also. But those are Health and Human Services. So two reasons. One, a lot of people coming in. Two, they're not moving out fast enough from Border Patrol facilities.
And Congressman, as you pointed out, there are some kids who are being kept in CBP facilities for longer than the allowed 72 hours, just because of the overload on the system. And of course, President Biden has gotten some criticism about that. There are also been stories in which members of the Biden transition team have said that the Trump administration, on its way out, sort of dragged its feet when it came to creating more shelter space, when it was already kind of apparent that we were seeing an influx of migrants coming from Central America. I mean, where do you place the blame when you look at this issue?
I want to say that it's a combination of both in the sense, and look, I'm a Democrat, and I've been very supportive. I campaigned for Joe Biden. I saw what he did as vice president, and I want him to succeed. But you got to look at where the numbers at. If you look at the numbers, you will see that this started under President Trump, August, September, and especially October, November, December, January, at least up to January 20th, midday. It then becomes an issue for President Biden. But this number started rising at that time. When people say, and you can look at some of the fact checks where they say, the Republicans dismantled the immigration system and asylum. It's been, it's half truth. When the Republicans say, Biden got rid of all the border policies. That's half truth also. I mean, there's a little truth in there, on both statements, to be very straightforward. For example, when they said, oh, Biden got rid of all the policies. Well, the 1944 law, which is the Title 42, we're still using this. And it's used on adults and some family members, as long as the kids are under the age of 7.
Right, and this is the public health law that was used under the Trump administration during the COVID-19 pandemic, basically to expel asylum seekers and kind of shut down that process because of the public health concerns. As you said, President Biden has continued it with making the exception for unaccompanied children. I was curious what you make of the use of the policy, Title 42, and how Joe Biden has continued to use it, but made that one change in it.
Well, first of all, they're not using Title 42, this 1944 law, the public health, as you mentioned, for unaccompanied kids. Number one, they're using it for some family units, depending on what Mexico will allow. So right now, generally speaking, if you have a family with a child under 7 years old, they stay here. If there is a family unit with children above 7, then they could be returned back. Most of the adults are being returned. So if our system is being overwhelmed right now, imagine if Title 42 would go away. So I support Title 42. It's a 1944 law because if we think we have a system that's overloaded, imagine if the adults or all family units will be coming into the United States. I mean, right now, I feel bad for Border Patrol. There are so many Border Patrol and OFO, which is the men and women in blue, that have been taken away from securing the border or being at our bridges or airports because they're out there in many ways babysitting families. We have to, the kids. I mean, I feel so bad, terrible, for those young kids. I mean, I've always said, once those kids are in our custody, we take care of those kids like if they're our own kids.
Congressman, I'm curious how you feel about Operation Lone Star. This was announced by Governor Abbott earlier this month. It appears to be a surge of DPS officers to the border. Is this necessary? Is this a concern for you?
Well, listen, I certainly welcome DPS, certainly welcome the National Guard, which is paid by the federal government. DPS is paid, I think, about $800 million by the state legislature. I certainly welcome them down there. But keep in mind, they do not have immigration law powers, both of them, the National Guard or them. Yesterday, when I was going down from Laredo down to the Valley, I think I used to say 1/4 mile, but I think now it's even less than that. You have them just lined up along Highway 83. Do they stop some of the smugglers or some of the folks there on highways? Yes. But keep in mind that most people are going to come right now in between, along the border. DPS does a little bit of that. National Guard does a little bit. But keep in mind, if people think that they are securing our border through the immigration law, they just don't have that power. And I told Border Patrol, we got to talk to the state and see if there's a more efficient use of using DPS instead of them lining up and down Highway 83 as an example, where maybe they can be utilized in a different way that will be useful to our men and women in green.
And now I'm curious, where are these DPS officers being pulled from? Do you know if it's impacting law enforcement in other areas and perhaps contributing to a lack of coverage in other areas of Texas?
Well, certainly, I mean, they are pulled from different parts of the state of Texas, and I've certainly heard that for many years because this is not the first time they've done this. As you know, they've been used for so many years. And it takes away from DPS from other places. So, yes, it does have an impact. I don't have that info. I think the state legislature will probably have a better info. But certainly, it's pulled from them. And again, I certainly welcome them. I just, as I told the Border Patrol chief yesterday, or asked them, can't we find a better way of coordinating with them? And again, they're just up and down. If you talk to Judge Eloy Vera, the judge from Stark County, he'll give you a very strong opinion that they're just there giving tickets out there on Highway 83. So again, I welcome them. I used to do the appropriations for DPS when I was in the state legislature. My brother's a former DPS trooper, so I respect them. But I wish we could have a more coordinated way with Border Patrol. But keep in mind, they have no immigration power.
Right. Congressman, you said that when it comes to immigration, the U.S. keeps basically playing defense at the 1 yard line. In other words, that we're being reactive rather than proactive. And I wondered, when you look at things that could be done differently, and I'm wondering, in particular, I'm wondering about, aid to the Northern Triangle countries in Central America, what some people have called a Marshall Plan for the Northern Triangle. Is that part of what you would see, or what would you see as a way of changing that dynamic?
Yes, sir. And it's a good question as to how do we handle this situation. First of all, there are lessons that we should take from President Obama, because then Secretary of Homeland Jay Johnson and he and I talked a lot about this particular situation. I think he understood this very well, and I'll go over that. And also, when we talk about, if you talk to a Republican, you will hear about pull factors, right? What we do here, what policies and all that. Then when you talk to a Democrat, generally, they talk about push factors, crime, poverty, drought some years ago, now a couple of hurricanes. Those are the things that they talk about. In my viewpoint, I think we need to look at both factors. So when you look at the roots, some people say, let's look at the root of the issue here. Without due respect, we've looked at this for so many years. I mean, this is not the first rodeo we've been at. So yes, back in 2014, myself and Kay Ranger, Republican from Fort Worth, we worked with the Biden administration. In fact, the vice president at that time was Joe Biden. Myself and Kay Ranger, we're the ones that added the first $750 million to Central America. If you look at, and then of course, Trump tried to zero that out, and we said no, but it got reduced to about, the last one was $505 million. If you look at the money that we've appropriated, and I use the word appropriated in Central America, from 2016 to 2021, we're talking about $3.6 billion to Central America. Now, some people say, well, Trump cut Trump. Well, yeah, it got reduced. He tried to stop it, but we have provided money to them. But the problem is half of that money has been stopped by the Senate, Democrats. And let me explain that. There are some conditions that got added when we added the first $750 million, where they said, well, we're going to hold half of your money if you don't do this thing on corruption and good government, good governance and all that, which are our good goals. But when you hold that money, you're hurting the NGOs and the people that need the help. So we're holding, at one time we were holding up to $800 million, almost $1 billion, because of those conditions. I understand we got to hold those countries accountable, but we got to be able to give this resources down to the people as soon as possible, because otherwise we're holding that money up. At one time it was $800 million. So, and one more thing, we don't give cash government to government. We don't do that. They go to NGOs that we work with in Central America and companies that, that money, American companies where those consultants, that money ends up back over here, contractors back at the U.S. So we don't give cash to those countries. It's done through NGOs and it's done in a very careful way. But that's only one thing. That's long term. The other thing is, and I'm glad that the vice president called the president of Guatemala yesterday. And yesterday I got on the phone. I spoke to the Guatemalan ambassador to the U.S., the Mexican ambassador, and today I'm supposed to follow up with the Honduran and El Salvador, because we got to get those countries to do more. They can do that. They can do more to hold folks there, have them in a safe place, so they don't make that very dangerous trek where the coyotes, will charge depending average of $6,000 for people to come over here in very dangerous situations. So yes, let's address the root issues. That takes a little bit of problem. Let's change the way we provide the assistance, and let's get those countries to do some immediate things by securing their own borders, Guatemala with Mexico, Guatemala with Honduras, like they're starting to do now again.
Even with different parties in the White House, and there have been some different policies, I think that there's been a kind of consistent effort, I think, to approach, whether it's been Democrats or Republicans, to approach the asylum seekers with kind of a deterrence policy, to make the process, to discourage people from coming and make it as difficult. And certainly President Trump maybe took it farther than others did with the separation of children from their parents and so on. But the policy of deterrence has, I think, been kind of a consistent theme. And there are some who argue, and your San Antonio colleague Joaquin Castro, I think, just wrote an op-ed this week about this, and making this argument that deterrence isn't really the way to go. That it doesn't it doesn't stop the flow of migrants. It might delay people from coming, but it doesn't really solve the problem. I'm curious to get your take, considering how much experience you've had with the border, whether you think deterrence, whether it works or it's the right policy. And I'm talking about with asylum seekers specifically.
Yes. Deterrence is part of it. And yes, you do got to provide that assistance to those countries over there so you can address the root issues. But look, bottom line is, if there's no consequence to an action, then it doesn't mean anything. And you address the issues over there, you provide the foreign aid. And I know, because I've been involved. And the last time I was in Central America, I was there with Speaker Pelosi and other members, and we talked to NGOs there. And so, yes, we got to address those issues, the root issues. Definitely, we got to do that. But at the same time, there's got to be some consequences, because otherwise you have catch and release. If you have catch and release, all you do is provide the incentive for more people to come in. I'll give you three messages that I always ask about what's heard down there. One is the administrations, and I'm glad they changed their message, because their first message was, don't come now, come later. It's like saying, break the law, don't break the law now, break it later. No, you got to say, don't come now, period. Unless if they follow a legal process. The second message is what I call what you hear on the streets, the friends, the neighbors, los amigos, los primos, that they hear on the streets. Hey, look, people are coming across. I got across. This is the time to do it. Then they see TV images showing people coming across. Then the third message is what the organizations, the criminal organizations, they aggressively promote that, because the more people they get, the more money they make. Bottom line. So they aggressively using social media, WhatsApp, and all that. And those are three messages. And I can tell you by my experience and by being there in Central America over the years, and even by talking to some of the people who have gotten over here, they don't hear the first message, but they sure pay attention to what their friends or their neighbors or their cousins are saying and what they see on TV. And certainly with the criminal organizations actively promoting, saying they can get them across now, the second and the third message are powerful messages that are being heard over here. And if they know that they get here and they get released, of course they're going to come. It adds to it. I'm a Democrat. I believe in having full immigration reform, guest worker plan, Dreamers Act. I voted for all that. But you got to have certain laws on the book. And if they say you come in this way, then you should come in. I've been pushing for more. I've added more immigration judges than anybody has. Judges in San Antonio and other places. But I've also advocated for immigration judges on the border. And in fact, we'll be announcing more immigration judges on the border. It took me about 2 years to get them convinced, but it's going to happen this summer because I think people should listen. The people should have their courts dates as soon as possible. And you will find out that if somebody asks for asylum, generally speaking, 100 people ask for asylum, 12 of them are going to be accepted, 88% are going to be rejected.
When we talk about immigration judges on the borders, you're talking about having these cases processed immediately on the border without having them released to sponsors. Is that right?
Well, we're talking about definitely the adults and the family units, the unaccompanied kids. There's a different process under the 1998 law that we have to follow for that. We want to release them to the families. About 40% will have a mom and dad, and there's the average time there is about 27 days to find a mom and dad, and then there's 4 categories. So I want to have dates down there. Courts down there to have the people have their day in court. That's the law. That's what we need to follow the law. Right now we have over 1 million final deportation orders, and they're there. So what does it mean to have a law on the book if we're not going to enforce it?
Congressman, before we let you go, you mentioned your support for the DREAM Act and for comprehensive immigration reform, and I wanted to get your thoughts. I think most people would say that in order to get real major immigration reform, it would have to be some kind of bipartisan effort, and that's what we saw in 1986 when the last time this happened. And obviously, the political climate has changed a lot. But I wanted to get your sense on whether you think that there is any possibility of making that kind of breakthrough in Congress in the near future.
I support the DREAM Act. I voted for a co-sponsor, the guest worker plan, and of course, full comprehensive immigration reform. Politically, as you know, we passed the DREAM Act and the guest worker plan, waiting to see if we can get 10 Republicans on those. Those are the easy ones. The full comprehensive is a lot more difficult. If you notice, that hasn't been brought to the House floor. So even among Democrats, there are some questions as to the full immigration reform. We need to have immigration reform, and you're absolutely right. If it's not done bipartisan, it's going to be very hard. Last time it was 1986, Republican President Reagan and a Democratic Congress. If it's not done that way, then it's going to be very difficult. The problem is that we're in a different environment where, if you do something with immigrants, the first thing the Republicans are going to scream, amnesty, amnesty, amnesty. Without due respect, a lot of us don't believe in amnesty. We believe in a earned pathway. Amnesty was what President Reagan did in 1986. I don't believe in amnesty. I believe in a earned pathway, the way we have been pushing the latest bills that we have.
Okay. Representative Henry Cuellar, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And for those of you listening, we hope everyone's doing well, and take care, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.